Okay, so we're going to start in a reclined pose, a supported reclined pose, soles of the feet together, knees wide. So Supta Baddha Konasana. And I'm just showing a way to set that up if you happen to have more blankets or things like blankets, if you're using, towels and whatnot, or a combination of things that you can just use towels and blankets if you don't happen to have a bolster that you can. I'm going to show a couple of different ways to modify and support a few of the restorative poses, child's pose, and then this pose. So I have, just because my floor is cold, I have a blanket unfolded completely so that even when my arms are out by my sides, that I have blanket underneath my hands and not on the floor. And then I have two folded blankets stacked one on top of the other here for my spine. And then I have a rolled up blanket in front of that to support my lumbar, tailbone, sacrum, and then a folded blanket here for my head. And that's one blanket, like a yoga blanket. Typically, we might have it just like this to support the head. I've gone ahead and folded it again one more time. So I'll have that. And then the other things that you want to have for, it this way, but you might want a strap, especially if you're using a blanket. If you have a blanket all the way unfolded out on the floor and you're wearing socks, and when you bring the soles of your feet together, they might start to slide out. You want a strap to kind of hold all of that together. Or if you have a sandbag or something that you're using in lieu of a sandbag can just sit over your feet and hold your feet. Keep your feet from sliding out. So that's how you can do it if you are just using blankets. So let's start there. Really sticky out of ears today. Okay, Mr. Kitty Potts is here. So take whatever time you need to make sure that that is set up well for you, that you have your head slightly, your chin a little bit higher than your chest, with enough support behind your head that your head is elevated. I'm going to go ahead and just do the strap and then lay both sandbags over my thigh bones where they meet my hip joints, just to help ground into the femurs, into the hip joints. Strap low across the sacrum, low on the lower back as it goes around you. You're using the strap, and then sandbag, and then of course support under the thighs, under the knees, under the thighs, so that they are resting. Start there. And so even, back where I have my hair pulled back into a little rubber band, the rubber band and the ponytail against the fold of the blanket is a little distracting, a little uncomfortable. I'm just going to loosen that. You set your glasses aside if you're wearing glasses. Make yourself, as usual, very comfortable. And we'll be here for about 10 minutes. We're going to hold this a little longer tonight, a nice full-on restorative hold. Your body supported, your bones, your joints, and your muscles supported comfortably, so that we can just allow the movement of breath. So we can just allow space for breath, for rest. So take your awareness to your face, to the muscles of your face. Relax the tongue from the roof of your mouth. Even if your mouth is closed, just let the tongue settle. Little minor adjustments just during the time we're holding the pose are perfectly fine. You just start to feel any discomfort or any strain through the joints in the muscles. And the way the body is supported, it might have too much height or not enough height. Too much pulling, too much of a sensation of intensity in the stretch. You want these long holds to be very comfortable. Notice the feeling of your breath. And the pattern or the tendency of your breath to change. Sometimes feeling automatic, unattended, sometimes feeling quite attended to. Just watch, observe the pattern of inhale and exhale, changing quality of that pattern. The last couple of minutes in the pose, you can leave your arms here if you want to leave your arms on the floor out by your sides. You can bring the hands to rest just right on the lower ribs, right where rib cage meets diaphragm, its solar plexus. Notice how the breath moves here. Let's take 3 more breaths in the pose. Then take your time. We'll slowly release the pose. So just start to loosen the strap. If you're using the strap, take the sandbags, set those off to the side. Bring your hips from the pose by extending your legs out. And take a breath there. And then come to a side, roll from your blankets onto the side. And we'll come up from there. And I want to show you a couple of different options for supporting child's pose. Okay, often there is either tightness along the shins and the tops of the ankles and the feet, or there's discomfort in taking too deep of a bend of the knee, right? So we don't need a strap. Set the strap aside. I'll try to show this just with blankets, but I may enlist the bolster if I need to. So for your ankles, if the ankles are tight, and you find that in child's pose, you tend to have, right, this kind of gap of space between your ankle, shins, or the tops of the feet and the floor. They don't sit flat. There's just tightness or stiffness in the fronts of the ankles. You can take a blanket, roll it up a little bit if you want to. You could just leave it just folded and flat, but you want to pull it up so that your ankles will sit on top of it, so it supports the gap. The roll of the blanket will support that space, okay? Cyclists, right? People who maybe even run or cycle a lot tend to have tight ankles. That's something you can do for your ankles. If you have both the issue of tight ankles and discomfort in the knee, right, or any issue with the knee where when you're in child's pose, with the knees wide and the feet back, your hips don't come all the way to your heels, to your feet. So there's a little gap there, right? Take another blanket and you can fold it, square fold like a cushion. You can roll it up again and just set it between knees. So you're not letting your knees go as deep into a bend, into a flex. Okay, so what this does is brings everything up a little bit higher, so that when you're coming down into your child's pose, you're more inclined, which means that you are going to want to add some more height, so that you want to keep your spine, the back of your head, the side of your head, and your low back more or less all in the same plane. So you would just continue to stack a few more blankets, or if you have a bolster, maybe in a couple of blankets on top of that. Okay, so that's just a couple of things you can do if you need to support knees or support ankles. I'm going to set those aside and come to child's pose. And try today child's pose. If you don't need these other options, I'm going to have one more blanket. I'm going to have 3 folded blankets. If you have a bolster, use your bolster. Maybe an additional blanket. And I'm going to pull it in close, right? So that I'm going to tonight try to let my abdomen rest as well on the blanket. the sandbag, if you have a handy sandbag, then you can maneuver it onto your sacrum, onto your low back. And go crossways, across the back. You can also try playing with it lengthwise on the back, just to ground the hips, ground the pelvis. Find a supported child's pose. Now my arms are just going to rest alongside. Go a few minutes with the head turned to one side, resting on one cheek, one side cheek, and then we'll switch about halfway through. But again, a longer hold. So just do anything you need to do to make sure that all of your supports are doing what they should be doing, supporting your comfort. So let's go ahead and turn the head, rest on the opposite cheek if you haven't already turned your head. And of course, if there's any discomfort in resting on the opposite cheek, turn your head back into first position. Or you can always just bring your hands up and let your forehead come to rest on the hand. Let's take another 3 or 4 breaths in the pose. And when you're ready to, slowly release yourself from the pose. Just lay that chin back down and push hands to floor to bring spine up. And then let's this side. And come down to your back. Those just sit there for a moment. Come onto your back. No props necessary. And with your arms a little bit away from your sides and your feet on the floor, hips distance apart or so, feel the feet pressed to the floor. And we just want to let the feet and the ankles, the knees and the hips readjust here a little bit from after following that longer hold in the child's pose. So just let the knees drop to one side, let the hips turn, the shoulders just stay heavy. The shoulders are wide, the arms are wide, the upper back is wide. Just come up and move your legs. So let your hips turn. Slight rotation, a gentle rotation through the lumbar spine. Once more to each side. Good. And then your feet just come back up to stand and then come over onto one side and then we'll come press up from the floor and find a supported bridge pose. Okay, so that's just a block or a block with a blanket over it or a bolster. Or again, if you're just using stacks of blanket and set them across your mat to the height of 2 or 3. That's about as high as my big bolster when I'm using the bolster. But if it feels like it's just too much and I start to feel a little bit of kind of a pinching in the low back, then I can just take one out. Okay, and then just get your hips hoisted up there, fall back into your hands, and then one elbow, and then the other elbow, and then on your upper back. I'm just going to start here. And you want to just really at the bottom of your waist, right? Kind of right at the where you can, if you can feel the tops of your hips where your hip bones kind of flare and they kind of circle, big circles from front to back. You want the top of the folded blankets to be just kind of almost even with your hips and not in your lumbar spine, right? Just adding compression where there might already be a little compression. You just want that part of your back to be a little more free. And we can rest here with the arms on the floor, robot arms, right? Scarecrow arms. You can rest your hands on your rib cage. Rest your arms where they can release, where they can fully rest. And we'll start just here with both feet on the floor. You could optionally take a strap if you just feel like your legs want to do either a falling apart, or if they feel like they want to fall in, but they don't want to just stay and rest on their own aligned, then you can have a strap around the thighs so that the thighs just rest against the edges of the strap. But if the knees will rest here, you can really feel into a really neutral leg and knee joint. You can be in the supported bridge pose without the strap. Let's take a few minutes here. Okay, and then just feel free to stay right here, your feet on the floor. Mild back bend, you might sense sort of kind of a release of the shoulders as the chest broadens, or if you want to extend a leg, you could extend one leg. 5 breaths. Just what you need to. You don't want to create compression in the low spine when you extend that leg and tilt your pelvis away from you. So adjust what you need to so that you feel long, continue to feel length through low back. Five breaths. Switch legs when you're ready to switch. So notice what length in that extended leg feels like. Notice where you feel sensation of leg. Good. So if your leg is extended, go ahead and bring that foot back in. And let's bring both the knees up and in toward your chest, if that feels okay. That feels okay. This is a nice just pressure against your sacrum. Go back and forth, knees a little rock from side to side. And then I'm just gonna push with my hands those blankets out from behind me, set my feet on the floor, and then let's come over onto the side and come up from there and set up, see how we can support a twist, a recline twist. And let's do a recline twist on the back, lying down on your back. Okay, and so you might have a couple of options of blanket at the ready. Long folds are good, long folds are fine, or a bolster. So, or even sandbags, although I think just wrangling the sandbags is sometimes a little effortful when we're trying to stay in the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you come onto your back and without any supports at all, you come down onto your back, head to the floor, and then you bring your knees into your chest and you drop your knees to one side. We're going to today make this a little more neutral for the hips and the sacrum, the hip joints and the sacrum, by adding a little bit of support between your two knees. Okay, I'm just going to grab a blanket and set it between my feet, my shins, and my knees. Okay, and if you're a side sleeper and the doctor has recommended that you sleep with a pillow between your knees to protect your back, strain in the back and strain in the hips, right? Same principle, same kind of principle. And then from here, if you still feel like opposite shoulder back there is a little bit off the floor, again, another blanket. It doesn't even have to be double folded. You could unfold it and let it be a single fold. To support that shoulder blade, upper back. I'm going to unfold it and just let it be, again, filling the gap. Head still on the floor, but kind of that shoulder blade and that arm can rest. And then, right, in lieu of sandbags, you can use blankets as extra weight, maybe over the hip, maybe over the shoulder that just wants a little more grounding. And see how that feels. And if your bolster is handy, if you use a bolster, you could also put the bolster right here at the lower back and have like a little wall of support right there behind your sacrum. I think since I do have more blankets, I'm gonna have a blanket over my hips. I'm gonna have a blanket over my shoulder. My rolled up blanket, that's still rolled up from the beginning of practice. I'm just gonna kind of wedge into my upper back. And now this really feels like customized, like somebody just created. I ordered a custom reclined spinal twist prop putting together. Good, so let's take another breath or two here. Yeah, and then just slowly start to redistribute your props. So you can release yourself from the pose and find your way back onto your back. Just let the hips come out of rotation, rib cage out of rotation. Let your knees come to your chest. And then we'll go on to the other side. I'm gonna just move my head to the other end, so I'm facing you. And keep in mind too, that when you're on your side with your knees stacked, that your knees don't have to be like directly, glued together. They don't have to be symmetrical. If it happens that when you're on your back or on your side rather, or you're on the side of your hips and then you kind of pull the shoulder back, that your knees slide apart a little bit. Perfectly. We want to be really perfectly comfortable. We're not looking for rigidity and alignment. We want the body to just sort of fall into position where it would naturally, really comfortably fall. Okay. I was noticing that in my low back as I came out of the pose on that side. So keep that in mind with stacking knees. Let's just take everything. I'll be over here with that support for shoulder, and then I'll just add these as I find my way down. So I want to start without props again, and then just add them as I bring myself into the pose. Super helpful when you don't have anybody to come and do it all for you, as you would in a class. Okay. So if I come and let my knees stack, and then I'll notice as soon as I start to roll this shoulder back and let that arm come, my knees are apart. Right. I just want to support that right where it is. So this knee is a little lower, it's a little more pulled back so that my hips do a natural kind of rotating back. I want the spinal rotation in my sacrum to be very comfortable. And then I can, again, just add pressure, add weight for grounding. Take your time. Move everything in where it feels like it's doing the work of the pose, not you. Right, my shoulder. And we're going to take about 2 minutes, 3 minutes here. Let's take another breath or two here in the pose. And then again, just take your time. Move slowly out from underneath your blanket and over onto one side, and then press yourself up from there. And then to set up a support for your head for Shavasana, let's do something a little bit different. So if you're using blankets, take a blanket to Tadasana, and then give it another half fold. We're actually going to use, right, the unfolded ends, right, to support your head. Okay, so let's take that, and where it brings itself in half, you're going to just take that 1/2, and once you get it underneath your head, you're going to take this, you're going to roll it under, right, so that you are creating a little cradle here for your head, and then you'll take the bottom one and tuck it under the top one. Okay, and then if you feel like you just want a little more elevation than this under your head, you could have a second blanket for that, and then you would have your specially folded, like little clamshell blanket on top of it. Okay, so you could have 2 blankets, and then maybe you have a couple of blankets you could roll up. See if I can do it all without any bolster today. Have a couple of blankets under your knees, or a couple of blankets rolled up to support the back of your knees. And as always, if you are luxuriating in blankets, you start to feel chilly, of course, you can always use a blanket just to cover yourself up. Okay. Okay. Set yourself up for Shavasana, and we'll take about 8 minutes in Shavasana. Make sure you're crease free, wrinkle free. There's nothing kind of hiding out that's gonna be like a pea underneath your mattress. Good. So if you need to adjust what you have here, right, so that you feel really just snug. You want the blankets to provide a kind of a snug at the top of the neck, the base of the skull, and the head, and then your arms can go. Arms can let go. Give yourself a few breaths to really get there. To sink in, to sink down, release the tongue from the roof of your mouth. Keep coming back to that. Keep coming back to that particular release. Helps to deepen the breath and to continue down regulating the nervous system. Really has a feeling of opening the airways. You'll feel the whole lower mandible and the throat soften. Release the tongue from the roof of the mouth. And you might just keep coming back to it. It has a tendency to float back up. Let's then begin lengthening, deepening your next 2, 3, 4 breaths. without any sense of hurry or effort at all. When you're ready, begin to just come maybe up with your feet, moving prop aside if you've got a prop behind your knees, shift your hips to one side, rest on the opposite shoulder. And then from there, just a slow, gentle push through the palms. And just let your head stay heavy, 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 heavy. Roll up from your side. Let your legs find the comfortable seat. And then just let the head be that last thing that lifts up. You feel fully upright in your spine again here to close your practice. Good. Palms together in front of your heart. Always, always honoring your time here. Honor yourselves for making time. It's always wonderful to share time and space with you. Virtual space, real time virtual space. Until next time, namaste.